Hello, glad you can join us. Here's what's happening right now. A city reeling after a stabbing spree at the Stampede.
It makes me a little scared to bring my child here, right?
3 people hospitalized as police investigate who's behind the attack.
I don't know what this means for us.
Falling behind the $10 a day daycare dream while renters have new hope.
This is such a crazy accomplishment.
Plus, Operation Robot is a surgical success.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
A night of terror in Calgary at the midway of the popular Stampede. Police have put the word out for witnesses after the festival was marred by violence. A targeted stabbing assault that's left 3 people in hospital. CTV's Kathy Lee is in Calgary. Kathy, talk to us about where the investigation stands. I know there's been an update by police.
Yes, Andy, there was just a recent update from Calgary Police. Right now, they don't have any suspects in custody. They don't have any charges yet, so they're still putting that call out to any witnesses that may have seen anything last night. What we do know is an update on the victims. We have 3 victims in hospital, serious but stable condition right now because of stab wounds. It happened in this area last night at around 11 o'clock. But 2 of them are 18 years old, 1 of them is 15 years old. Police say that there was a fight that broke out last night between 2 groups. Unclear if they are known to police at this time. 2 groups fought. 3 were stabbed, and the rest, I know there are various different types of injuries, but it's still pretty early in the investigation. Police are going through CCTV footage. You know, those drones that were brought in this year to monitor and surveil the Stampede were not used last night. They were in a different area, but police say there is CCTV footage and witnesses that they're counting on to try to figure out who did this.
Okay. Quickly, Kathy, lots of folks come to Calgary for the Stampede. What are they generally saying about what happened? Are they nervous about being in the city?
Yeah, I mean, as you heard in that clip in the headlines there, you know, there's a mother who's scared. She's saying, I don't know if I want to bring my child here. Lots of shocked reaction today to what's happened, because it doesn't usually happen, you know, here at the Stampede that you hear about an incident like this. You know, I will say, though, that, you know, surveillance and security has been beefed up this year at the Calgary Stampede. It's temporarily turned into a police district. There's officers here, lots of police presence last night, but you know what, these things happen, and you know, at this point, police are hoping that people will come forward with some information. Okay. Back to you, Sandy.
All right, thank you. CTV's Kathy. Now, 2 months after tragedy at a street festival in Vancouver, there are recommendations on how to improve safety at public events like that. 11 people were mowed down that day when a car drove into a crowd of Lapu Lapu Day festival goers. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson is with us. And Andrew, the report looks at ways of avoiding similar tragedies. So you've seen it. What's the big takeaway?
The big takeaway here, Sandy, is there needs to be more standardized communication, planning, and funding for public events in BC to try to make it more difficult for someone to do major damage. The report released today by the province was put together by a retired judge and contains 6 recommendations, including risk assessments for all events across BC, big or small, to try to determine risks around crowd management and access. There needs to be a centralized hub for training in the province. A lot of these events rely on volunteers who don't have a lot of security training, standardized resources for them. There also needs to be a standardized system to deal with jurisdiction, who can make decisions around events and when, as well as applying to get an event going and following all of the standardized procedures. It can be very confusing, and there needs to be more provincial funding, as particularly across the province in small communities where resources are limited, to help organizers bolster security, including the possibility of shared equipment. This all comes 2.5 months after Kaiji Adam Lowe was accused of using his SUV to plow through pedestrians enjoying a Filipino street festival. Along with the 11 people killed, dozens were injured. Police said at the time they had had several recent interactions with Lowe related to mental health.
Okay, now, Andrew, I know that, you know, you mentioned the survivors of that horrible attack. You've had a chance to speak to some of them. What changes were they hoping to see implemented?
Well, we've actually just spoken with one organizer and survivor, Sandy, who is cautiously optimistic about what was announced today in terms of recommendations, but skeptical how quickly the province could put this into action and how easily someone could access the funding and resources necessary to make events safer in the future. But as I said, cautiously hopeful.
All right, CTV's Andrew Johnson. Now, the RCMP is still looking for 2 men after what they call an unsophisticated explosive was set off outside the North Vancouver office of a provincial cabinet minister.
It could potentially be multiple bear bangers or commercially available fireworks.
These are the suspects, one wearing a long wig. A small explosive blew open the door of MLA Bowen Ma's constituency office. Okay, if you are a parent hoping to benefit from Ottawa's much-hyped $10 a day childcare initiative, you could be disappointed. Of course, it depends on where you live in Canada. But a new report suggests that the government is expected to miss the 2026 deadline for nationwide implementation. CTV's Rachel Aiello talks to a family waiting for relief in a province not meeting the target. Hi, Rachel.
Sandy, many parents are still paying more than $10 a day because 5 provinces have yet to make plans to further reduce fees at daycares like this one.
Oh my God, like what are we gonna do?
Patty Dunn is nervous. Getting her daughter Harper into daycare was no small feat.
I put ourselves on the wait list when I was about 10 weeks pregnant.
And now, with a second on the way?
I don't know what this means for us. Like, just because we have a spot already, does that mean that we'll have a higher chance of getting our next baby in?
Compounding this stress, living in Ontario, it still costs $22 for every day Harper is at daycare. And while it's better than what it was, she says getting that cost down to $10?
It would honestly give us like that peace of mind.
She's not alone. A new report out today found that while costs are coming down across the country, governments have more work to do to get to $10 a day nationwide by next year. 6 provinces and territories have already met or exceeded the federal target. None of it Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Quebec, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland and Labrador. But there are still 5 provinces where care costs more: British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia.
Although people think of this as a $10 a day program Canada-wide, that's the aim. How it's implemented is the thing that makes the difference.
It's not just parents feeling the program's growing pains. It's daycare providers too, because while fees are dropping, demand isn't.
Right now I have over 1,200 parents or children waiting on the list with only 500 spaces, and my 500 spaces are full.
Today, a spokesperson for the federal families minister touted the $27 billion investment to support province and territories in delivering more affordable childcare, and said the government continues to work with them to deliver on that promise. While that work continues, moms like Patty just want to see more spaces opening up as soon as possible.
It would help to alleviate the stress.
Experts say in order to create those spaces, all levels of government need to work together to build up the early childhood educator workforce, which will take years. Sandy?
Rachel, thanks. More economic pain coming our way if Donald Trump goes through with his threat to ratchet up the trade war with a measure that could hurt Canadians. He's musing about a 50% tariff on imported copper. More than half of our exports go to the States. CTV senior political correspondent Michael Couture joins us. And Mike, the U.S. president appears to have a lot on the go tariff-wise.
That's right, Sandy. U.S. President Donald Trump released another batch of tariff letters to more trading partners. Now, they include Brunei and Libya, and the tariff rate ranges from 20 to 30%. Now, Canada isn't included on those letters, but the government continues to watch after Trump said he'd impose 50% tariffs on copper imports.
When it comes to the latest declaration from the president in the United States, we have not yet seen an executive order.
Industry Minister Melanie Joly says the government is watching closely to see if Canada is affected by any more trade action from the United States. It is worth noting a 50% tariff on Canadian copper would be significant. Of the $9.3 billion worth of exports in 2023, more than half went to the U.S. The next 2 biggest destinations for Canadian copper were China and Japan. Trade experts say instead of forcing countries to make deals, U.S. tariffs are creating new economic alliances that actually exclude the U.S. And that could be bad for the American economy. And Canadian lawmakers say the goal is to get a deal that works for workers in this country.
My job right now is to make sure that in the context of this trade war, I'm supporting the front lines of this trade war, which are the workers and the companies affected by the unjustifiable and unjustified tariffs.
And the clock is ticking. Canada's self-imposed deadline to hammer out an economic and security deal with the U.S. is July 21st. Sandy?
Mike, thank you. On the issue of security, Canada's plan to rearm militarily with Europe was front and center, if you'll recall, when King Charles read the speech from the throne. It's a pledge that will boost Canada's defense industry and reduce reliance on the Americans. But the move threatens to provoke the U.S. president. CTV's Judy Trin now on a new report that lays out the major challenges ahead as a result.
Sandy, the authors of the report are members of the expert panel on Canada-U.S. relations. And the risks they highlight aren't just coming from America, but also Europe and from within Canada. About 75% of the military equipment Canada uses comes from the United States. To reduce reliance, the Prime Minister signed a security pact with the European Union last month.
Our strategic Canada-EU or EU-Canada strategic partnership for the future will build a new and deeper relationship.
That new partnership with the EU could put Canada in the retaliatory crosshairs of the Americans, according to a new report written by former Canadian defense and security officials.
The U.S. might respond in a negative way and start canceling U.S. contracts to Canadian companies.
One pressing matter, the F-35s. Canada has paid for 16 American fighter jets. The government is evaluating if it should turn to the Swedish Gripen fighter instead for the rest of its order. But the U.S. ambassador has warned against doing that.
Canadians are flying one airplane, we're flying another airplane. It's no longer interchangeable. And so, that might even threaten NORAD.
The EU defense partnership also gives Canadian companies access to European markets. But the report's authors note some members can veto trade deals.
If you look at our free trade agreement that we have with Europe, a number of countries within Europe still have not ratified it.
The Europeans need critical minerals to build its defense capability. The report highlights regulatory barriers in provinces like BC, which could delay projects by years. The authors stipulate that in the face of economic threats that could continue beyond the Trump administration, turning to European allies to safeguard Canadian sovereignty is not only a bold strategy, it's necessary. Sandy.
Okay, Judy. Now, Donald Trump will be heading to the flood zone in Texas this week. As many as 170 people are still missing. At least 119 are dead.
It's an all hands on deck. Everybody we got are out here, but also we have additional 2,000 plus people helping us.
Thousands of first responders and volunteers are involved. The local sheriff says an investigation will take place down the road. Some towns didn't hear warning sirens, while others had no system in place. And a remarkable rescue in Paris, where a man is being called a hero after risking his life to save multiple people from a burning apartment, including 2 babies. Now you can see the man standing on the narrow ledge outside a 6th floor window. As smoke billows out, he reaches out to grab the infants and then stretches out to hand them to safety. The footage shows him assisting other trapped family members. The Paris police chief says the hero will be honored for his courage and his dedication. Much more ahead. Don't go away. If it's becoming a challenge to make ends meet these days with the cost of just about everything up, it's a big relief for millions when rent prices go down, and that's what appears to be happening in many cities. CTV's Heather Wright now on what's behind the good news and what it means to the bottom line. Heather.
Well, Sandy, it's basic supply and demand. There has been a rapid increase in available rental units, and that's pushing down the cost of rent. The challenge is the decreasing costs are not necessarily being felt by people, especially in the most expensive markets. In cities from Halifax to Vancouver, the price of rent is sliding, down between 2% and 8% compared to this time last year. But it's a decline not everyone is noticing, especially in markets like Toronto and Vancouver, where rents are highest.
Everyone I know, that they're living with their parents still, or they live with a bunch of roommates, and that's just the reality in Toronto right now.
According to the mid-year rental market report released by the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, there are a number of factors behind the drop in rent. Purpose-built rental supply is growing, increasing the number of units available. Immigration levels and a cap on international students is decreasing demand, especially in Nova Scotia, Ontario, and British Columbia. Plus, the sluggish labor market and high youth unemployment is forcing many would-be renters to live with their parents longer.
I've been looking to move out, but it's just not possible with how expensive it is.
And while advertised rents are down in Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and Halifax, they are up in Edmonton and Montreal, though prices are increasing at a slower rate.
When you look at Montreal or Edmonton, for example, these are still more affordable markets. And so not only the rent level or the rent price itself, but when you compare to the income, for example, they're still relatively more affordable markets.
The CMHC expects rents to continue going down, which of course is good news for affordability. But the Housing Corporation also warns that decreasing demand could also discourage developers from building more units, which could hurt supply in the long term. Sandy.
Yeah, they're right in Toronto. The city of London, Ontario, has been fighting an outbreak of Legionnaires disease that's now turned deadly.
This year in 2025, we've had 43 cases of Legionella confirmed, and unfortunately, we have had one person die.
The Middlesex London Health Unit, which declared the outbreak, says most cases of this serious respiratory illness are within a 6-kilometer radius. Legionnaires is caused by a bacteria that can hide in shower heads and hot tubs. Health officials say the overall risk to the public is low, and most exposed to the bacteria don't develop symptoms. And as Alberta is also marking a challenging milestone in its fight against a measles outbreak, the province has the most infections in North America on a per capita basis, raising concerns that the Calgary Stampede and other summer events could push cases higher. Alberta now has recorded more than 1,200 cases since March. Ontario, with a population 3 times the size, has been dealing with about 1,900 infections, but that is since October.
Coming up on CTV National News, I'm Allison Bamford in southwestern Saskatchewan.
It's pretty bleak.
Why extreme drought is prompting a state of emergency as farmers fight a decade of dry conditions.
This is probably our worst year yet.
That story coming up.
Saskatchewan is dealing with some 68 active wildfires, and with heat warnings in the southwest and states of emergency due to drought, it's been a struggle for many, as CTV's Allison Bamford tells us.
This time of year, fields should be thick with plants and pods abundant with peas.
A good crop would be 6 to 7.
But these are not good crops.
It's very troublesome to see a crop like this.
Tyson Jackstite's lentil field shows just as much dirt as it does plants.
What makes it worse is we've had this kind of crop for 9 years consecutive now.
Farmers say parts of southwestern Saskatchewan have only received about an inch of rain since April. The rural municipality of Big Stick, along with neighboring RMs, declared states of emergency due to the drought conditions.
This is the 3rd year that we've done this. This is by far the worst year for sure.
Windy, hot summer days like this one with temperatures above 30 degrees aren't helping, and farmers say even rain at this point won't make the crops much better.
It's pretty bleak.
A little further west, Virginia Meyer hasn't been able to grow her cattle herd in years. She's conserving feed sources, fearing pastures will dry up.
We need to be able to think about next year and make sure that we have enough grass and hay for next year.
Changes to insurance will address some of this year's feed shortages. Producers can turn poor crops into livestock feed without getting dinged on future coverage. But farmers staring down a decade of drought want more protection.
I think our gross is like $161 an acre for crop insurance. You know, really your cost of production is more than that.
We farm 7,500 acres together, probably going to lose $750,000.
But it's hope that keeps these farmers in the fields and optimism that there's always next year. Allison Bamford, CTV News, near Golden Prairie, Saskatchewan.
After the break, the remarkable robotic breakthrough. We'll have the futuristic post-op details. It's a sign of the times. A robot powered by artificial intelligence has successfully performed surgery for the first time. Now, the patient wasn't a living, breathing human, but that's coming soon to an operating theater near you. CTV's Abigail Beeman shows us the graphic procedure that is something that's not for the faint of heart.
We successfully completed all 8 ex vivo studies without any human intervention.
You're watching a robot perform realistic surgery without human help for the very first time.
I lost my mind. I think this was such a crazy accomplishment.
Lead study author Ji Woong Brian Kim couldn't believe it, watching the robot, called SRTH, successfully perform a gallbladder surgery on a dead pig. Built and trained with the same architecture that powers ChatGPT, SRTH watched videos of surgeons at work.
It's a model that's actually learned and actually kind of understands the surgery rather than, being just pre-programmed.
While no human intervention was needed, there is a human who can override the robot if necessary.
Our goal is not to replace surgeons. We want to just make the surgery easier so that surgeons can perform more surgeries, fewer complications.
As long as the robot has the data, researchers say it should be able to perform any kind of surgery. They're already working on next steps. To get ready to operate on a live pig, this is a simulation with food coloring to imitate blood.
First thing that strikes me as an ethicist is consent.
Bioethicist Carrie Bowman says we need more data and research as AI in healthcare moves forward.
What's this going to look like for a country like Canada? Is this going to bring down wait times? Is this going to raise efficiency? It may. I'd like to keep an open mind about this.
As for when robots could perform surgeries on humans, researchers say that's still a number of years away. But experts warn AI is moving fast, and we need to be ready by answering the difficult questions around its use. Sandy?
Interesting. Okay, Abigail, thank you. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Your local CTV News is coming up. We'll see you tomorrow, we hope. Bye for now. Have a nice evening.
CTV National News.